I don't know about you, Kerry Jackson. I'm so worn out by Star Trek, and not in a bad way.
Not in a bad way, exactly.
No.
I look at the toxic fan atmosphere out there, and I have to throw my hands up and go, I don't know what your problem is.
I have this to say about toxic fandom. Star Wars or Star Trek could personally show up at each and every one of these fans' houses with an ice cream sundae and a Lifetime magazine subscription to the publication of their choice, and they'd complain that they didn't get tucked in with a story that night.
Bantha tracks.
Yeah, Bantha tracks. Just
for the old
me up. Before we fire into all of this, let's say hello to Brett, Nathan, and Vincent, our stalwarts.
Hey, guys.
Literally our bridge crew for this.
Yeah, and most of our information. I expect all of you to help me out here because I don't retain a lot of it. Spoilers. We're going to do a deep dive on the penultimate episode, Picard Season 3. So you have been warned. We're going to talk about it. If you don't want to, then leave the bridge.
The episode was called Vox, which I thought meant they were going to introduce Bono, the lead singer of the Federation, and that was not the case at all. By the way, your new lighting and your new camera look fantastic.
Oh, thank you. There's still more adjustments. I ran out of time today, so I didn't get a chance to do this, but still, I'm going to bring it down a little bit.
Works perfectly. So the episode starts where the previous episode left off with Deanna and Jack Crusher doing a little meditative thing, and I didn't actually see it coming. Were you surprised?
I didn't see it coming, but I should have. I mean, I was the one talking about Pa Wraiths, and I think, and when it happened, when she said the Borg, I went, "How stupid was I to think it was Pa Wraiths? Why am I?" Yeah.
Makes sense that a show about Jean-Luc Picard ends with him facing his greatest adversary.
Exactly. I mean, it's his greatest enemy.
I was a giddy third grader in love with everything all over again, though, when they showed that Borg cube, and it's like, you know what? The Borg's been played out for me. I didn't care.
Well, here's the thing. Picard Season 2. The Borg kind of got played out for me.
Yeah, and Girardi and her hippie Borg.
Exactly. That whole running around today San Francisco, with the Borg stuff, I was just like, oh, yeah. Okay, whatever. Have fun with that. Hope you enjoy it. If you liked it, you liked it. Hey, great.
Oh man, but it's the Borg,
but and the way that they went down. First of all, let's talk about Deanna completely breaking patient confidentiality. She leaves the room.
She hightails it out of there. Now we did a little research on this because it was brought up last week that Deanna doesn't have true telepathic powers. So I went to Memory Alpha and I dove into this. Memory Alpha is a website that is amazing, and it's always been there, and it'll always be there. It'll outlive humanity. Betazoids are true telepaths. Deanna is not. She's mostly an empath, and those that she's truly close to, she can communicate with. But Luixana was a full telepath. Like, she could full on usually chastise. I think at one point she told Ben Sisko that he was a naughty boy for checking out her caboose.
Oh. Well, now then that opens up that whole Odo Luxana relationship situation now. That makes it completely different to me now that I know that.
Empathy is a thing that all Betazoids hold, but the most powerful of them are full-on telepaths. So,
or as Vincent puts it, Deanna has whatever powers the writers decide that she has. Yes.
Right. And they did a great thing where they said in this episode, my powers are far from perfect. So we know she can speak telepathically to Riker. We know she can speak telepathically to her mother. And I'm sure under duress, or in this case, I wanted to make a Durash joke, but there's no Klingons here other than Worf. So,
well, and she has the ability to erase memories, like she did with Will.
Yeah. So she definitely jail blocked his emotions and feelings.
So she breaks the patient confidentiality oath, runs right to Mom and Dad, says your kid is Borg.
Yeah, he's out partying with the wrong kids, right?
Yeah.
So,
And the way that it's passed along somehow. It was like it became something else inside of Picard's body, and then bloop, placed.
Just imagine if young Jean-Luc Picard had been assimilated. That guy was a bit of a horn dog, so there might have been quite a bit of Borg goo spread around. But in this case, just with this particular situation with Beverly, we have fully integrated data now, and he and Geordi start to figure out some work. But of course, there's problems here in that there are protocols in effect that have been put into place because Jack is probably Borg. We know he can get into people's minds and get them to do things that they're not necessarily in compliance with.
Well, he's got a Borg transmitter.
Yeah.
And possibly a receiver. I mean, because he can hear the voices.
Right. And so should we just jump right into that?
Let's go right into it.
So the syndrome that Picard's had, I always want to say aromatic syndrome, but that's that's just the syndrome of aroma. He has, it wasn't actually it. It was a side effect that manifested as that syndrome because of the Borg very cleverly deciding that some of his circuitry was going to be organic. And due to that, he passed that on to his offspring. And that's all the receivers and transmitters and everything else that the Borg usually have mechanically implanted in their victims. But in Locutus's case, it was far more subtle and tricksy, right? So, but there's a great thing. They just tied a little bow around something that's been going on since Locutus was no more, which is that anytime Picard's around Borg, he can hear them. He can hear them speaking, and he can hear the Queen. And it's because he still has the DNA in his system. And that's what Jack has been talking to, his imaginary friends that he's been talking to since he was a little kid, which is sinister as hell, Terry Metalis, let me tell you.
And the voice, I think they kind of tricked us, because the voice sure as hell sounded like his mother. It really did. But it is his mother,
It was Gates McFadden.
It was Gates McFadden.
But then they slowly brought in Alice Krige to start replacing that voice. And, well, she's having a great time. If you've been watching Carnival Row, she's playing this old Fey witch. She's done a lot of things that I think old Northern European actresses really wait to get old to do. Right?
She's just wonderful. It was a pleasure to. I was lucky enough to go to the First Contact thing out in Hollywood and interview her, and she's just delightful.
That's awesome. Yeah. Jack decides he's not taking the news sitting down, possesses a couple of the Titan bridge crew, and hauls ass out of town. He takes a shuttle, turns off the transponder, and says, I'm out of here.
That's one of the things that we start to, how does he do that? And luckily, they explain it all. And I think this is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. The fact that the Changelings, it's a mighty Marvel team-up. The Changelings and the Borg, they're going to take out the Federation. We're going to do it together. We have to.
Right.
And here's how we do it. Y'all go in disguised as Federation people, lowlifes, people that no one is going to notice. I shouldn't say lowlifes.
Transporter officers, like on the Titan. Yeah,
exactly. Engineers, transporter officers, you're going to go in, you're going to put this technology in all the transporters.
And that's why they stole Picard's body, was to get this DNA.
So that they are able to assimilate people when they are transported, which is why earlier in the episodes, nobody wanted to take the transporter.
Rolaren knew it was connected to transporters and wouldn't get in one. Now, little did she know, and this is fantastic. So the prefrontal cortex of most human beings does not fully develop until they're in their mid to late 20s. And so that is the trigger here, is the prefrontal cortex. Once it stops developing, you don't get influenced by Borg goo.
So us oldsters, we're okay. We're not going to get
really
assimilated.
Over 25 to 30 years old is probably going to be all right.
Which is why Jack's in that sweet spot. He's what,
24.
24? Yeah.
24, yeah.
So he's probably just starting to lose it. He's not as strong as he could be, but,
We noticed, and I didn't even realize that my brain was subconsciously catching up to that. When Ro Laren transferred the majority of the crew off of the Titan, she left a ton of ensigns. And these ensigns are all in their early 20s. So you have Sydney and Alondra LaForge. They're both very young. We noticed that in the previous episode, because when the Changelings were on board killing everybody, they were mostly killing lieutenants and ensigns. There weren't a lot of senior crew members on board. So, that means that was mostly what was on the Titan. And shouldn't be a big deal, right? But it's a big deal. We get another great thing. We've covered most of the stuff on the Titan up to the big main event, but they cut to Frontier Day, which is a great little thing. We'll be talking about the Easter eggs from Den of Geek here in a little bit. Yeah. But we see somebody we haven't seen in 35 years. We see what was her name? Elizabeth Shelby, Admiral Elizabeth Shelby. Somehow made Admiral before Riker, which I'm sure is.
What's up with that?
Well, that was her thing in those episodes, Best of Both Worlds. She's the premier Borg expert to Starfleet. So I imagine during the events of First Contact, the movie First Contact, she was probably very heavily influential in the modern day battle against the Borg, and she was very career savvy. Like, she wanted Riker's job. She wanted to be on the chair, the first chair of Starfleet's flagship. So it makes sense that she would be that aggressive to move herself forward. But she's piloting the Enterprise F, which we haven't seen prior. Nice little tip of the hat to the Starfleet Online game. The video game debuted the Enterprise F a number of years ago, and they maintained the design for this series.
Same design.
It's the same design. So that actually came down from Paramount as, that was the F. But the ship was being decommissioned, so this is its last flight out, celebrating the commemoration of the NX-01, the original Enterprise 250 years prior. So fun distinction there, that Starfleet, even though it existed during Enterprise, it wasn't the same Starfleet, because it needed a federation to become the modern day Starfleet, which is what was created in the last episode of Enterprise. The whole commencement speech, the boldly go, all of that is Enterprise. So
wow,
nice little tie in there.
I just love that Metalis is a Trek fan. He knows his stuff. He does his research.
Nerd.
I love that.
He's our boy.
So all of the young Federation people are assimilated.
It's because they're always on their phones.
Yeah. And then when we get to the Frontier Day celebration with the Enterprise F and everything, they're announcing this brand new technology where we can sync all the ships together. And as soon as they said that, I went, bad idea.
Bad idea. And a great line from Riker, that the irony of Shelby being so invested in something so Borg-like. And she gets, as soon as the assimilation signal goes out, Seven points it out. As soon as that shrieking comes across, 7 of 9's like, that's Borg code, and all the youngins get turned, and you see Shelby get a couple phaser blasts. I love Shaw. As soon as they're getting ready to take off the bridge, Shaw yells out, "Stun only." So they're already going to lose this fight, because he doesn't want to kill his crew. He's hopeful that they can de-assimilate them, right?
Yeah.
So it's Picard's kids, it's the whole bridge crew, it's most of the security crew. Again, that's what Ro left them, were ensigns. And they have to get away. They have to get to a supply shuttle or an engineering shuttle, and a terrible thing happens.
The worst thing.
The worst thing. The line that I saw, and forgive me, cover your sensitive children's ears. The joke has been that Shaw reaches up to Seven and says, "I have been and will always be an asshole."
Captain A-hole, I was so sad.
We don't know he's dead.
Oh no, I went back and looked. That bolt went right through him. Out the back. It's he took his last breath there.
So there's 3 phaser settings. Did you know that?
Well, I thought that there was like 10. It was like different intensities, right?
Right, different intensities of 3 settings. So
okay.
There's 3 stun settings. There's a light stun and a heavy stun. There's the lethal one that if you get hit with that, you're hurting. But
Speaking of Speaking of stun, this is because this is for a future project that Rebecca and I are doing called the Space Show, where she's going to watch all those classic Treks. I watched Man Trap last night, and they had a stun setting that made you talk slow.
Oh man!
Oh my! He said it was the professor, the Salt Monster's husband. Oh my! And he was talking slow.
Nice. I love that.
Anyway, go ahead.
We know there's a full disintegrate setting, and we've known this going all the way back to Wrath of Khan when the one captain unalives himself.
Yeah.
The Changelings, they're not quite doing that. Not the Changelings, the Borg. They're not doing the full-on disintegration setting. They're knocking people down, hurting them, probably killing them. It's pretty bad news. The old crew takes off. There's a couple jokes about their age. I love those. Rafi and Seven stay behind because Shaw gives her command.
He says to Seven, "This is your ship now. Take it out." And he doesn't use her dead name.
Right.
He calls her 7 of 9,
which is awesome.
Which is great.
Awesome.
And so those two crazy kids that are deeply in love and just need to say it finally, again because they broke up.
Yeah.
Take off in the Titan. And we don't know what happened after that. Because
they're Esmer, Ensign Esmer is sitting at the con at that point, fully assimilated Esmer.
Yeah.
And also they do show how the entire Starfleet does against dissenters, because there's one point where the new USS Excelsior manages to retake the bridge, and they're trying to make a run for it, and the entire fleet just opens fire on them. So it's pretty grim. The crew takes off. They decide they're going to go back to the Starfleet Museum, and this goes back to something Alondra said when Geordi was brought back onto the show. Why don't we show them what's in Doc 12, Dad?
Now, see, when she said that, I haven't been good at figuring this show out, but when she said that, I'm like, oh, that's got to be the D. Show him the D.
I thought it was going to be the E. I really did think it was going to be the E. Yeah. But no, the bay doors open, and there it is. The Enterprise D, and Picard said exactly the same thing I was saying, which was, how the hell?
Because, you crashed that one.
Yeah, you crashed that one, but it's...
well, you notice everybody looked at Riker when that happened.
Yeah. So good. But yeah, the Prime Directive basically told them that they had to get the saucer section off of the planet that they had crashed it on, and that Geordi had basically parked the ship in his garage and had been tinkering on it for 20 years.
He said he took the warp nacelles from another ship and put them on, and he's a mechanic.
Yep, he's a mechanic, and that was his little hot rod project that he was probably working on with Alondra. And there's a great bit that didn't really even realize until Picard says it. He does this big stirring speech where he's talking about everything that he's missed, and being here with you all together now, he can finally say he's missed the carpet more than anything. And
he loves that carpet.
I went back. The Defiant, Enterprise C, Enterprise E, all the new ships, they don't have carpet.
The D was the only one with a carpet?
Yeah.
Well, what the hell, man?
Which is great when you're getting blown over the railings and all that other stuff. They're gonna go. Worf is upset because he preferred the guns on the E, but then we find out that Worf is responsible for the destruction of the Enterprise E.
And we don't get an explanation.
We don't. But
it's like in Trials and Tribulations where they say, why do the Klingons look so different? We don't like to talk about it. No explanation.
Don't like to talk about that. Yeah.
No explanation of what happened to the E.
No. There's a couple things though that I would love to share with you folks. So First, we are going to talk about IDW, the folks that have been doing the Star Trek comics for a while, and they've done some great ones. There's a really good one where Q and Trelane decide to settle a bet once and for all by pulling all of the Starfleet crews together and making them fight, which is
fun.
Delightful.
It's like Star Trek Secret Wars.
Basically, but it's just Trelane and Spock being idiots. Or not Spock, but Trelane and Q being idiots, which is... I love it so much.
While we're recommending IDW comics, they did Star Trek Year 5, which was the fifth
really good.
These are the, it's 5-year mission, and it was the original cast coming back to Earth, and it was really quite good. Anyway.
Well, it was great because it kind of gives you that pass off into how did Kirk get talked into being an admiral when that was something he didn't really want to do.
And we got Gary Seven show up again, so that was cool. Anyway.
Gotta love that stuff.
Yeah.
So there is a comic out called Star Trek. Hold on, let me find it. Star Trek Defiant. And it's set after DS9, but prior to Picard Season 3. And the writer has come right out and said that the showrunners of Season 3 of Picard were working with him to make sure that it worked canonically. It's not canon, but it works canonically. And it is the story of how Worf, Ro-Laren, and Lore steal the Defiant.
Lore?
Yeah. Steal the Defiant because they have to do something to get rid of a Kallus clone that is destabilizing the Klingon government. And they're saying that there is nothing about it that canonically does not work, and that's something Paramount worked really hard to make sure that if they decided to, they could flip the shiny canon switch on it, and that it won't be in conflict with anything. So the artwork's really good, and it's written by Christopher Cantwell, who worked on Iron Man and *Halt and Catch Fire*. So,
well, then I will have to get a hold of my comic book store and pick those up. Yes.
Absolutely. Let's get into Easter eggs, because these were there's a lot in this episode. So again, going to Den of Geek, they have laid it all down here. The Crimson Arboretum is the red forest from 12 Monkeys. Raritan 4, the planet that the Crimson Arboretum is on. Terry Metalis is from Raritan, New Jersey, so of course he sneaks it in to everything.
It's funny now that you remind me about the 12 Monkeys. The Red Forest.
Yeah, that was his thing throughout that entire bit.
Again, we've told you, if you like this season of Picard, you should watch the 12 Monkey series.
That's next on my list of things to check out. So we find out about why Picard was able to hear the Borg voices was because of the junk in his body. So it was his frontal lobe and part of his other parts of his body. Deanna Troy's gifts were explained in this, which I thought was fantastic. But they did do some deep research and found out that Lwaxana Troy actually could full on speak to anybody telepathically. That was never a problem for her.
Wow.
So confusion about Girardi's Borg, because they say flat out that the Borg haven't been seen in 10 years, and Picard just saw them last year. But that actually caused a splinter timeline.
Timey-wimey.
Per J.J. Abrams' Trek. In some Star Trek, you can reset the timeline, blah, blah, blah. But in most cases, you're just going to cause a splinter timeline. So Girardi's Borg don't exist on their timeline. But anybody who remembers them will remember them.
Yes.
So, Picard and the Borg Queen. He knows that she's there. He can tell right away. As soon as he knows the Borg are back, he just knows they're there, and he warns Jack not to go running off. Of course, Alice Krieg is back, so that's fantastic. We don't know about the Changeling Borg Alliance, but we do know it's there. I would say that the Changelings are probably the only ones that the Borg would make an alliance with, because they're not physical. They're non-corporeal. So not non-corporeal. They don't have their physical body's not malleable. You can't really assimilate them.
It would be tricky. Wouldn't it?
It's like, how do you get them to hold still long enough?
They would have to agree to team up. You couldn't make them.
There could be a consensual relationship in this case. So
exactly.
All right, ships referenced. The USS Okuda, named after Michael and Denise Okuda, who developed LCARS and were the artistic directors for the original 80s and 90s shows.
They've worked on Star Trek forever, and they're some of the best people too. They really are.
There's a great bit on Paramount Plus where they actually talk to them about the redesigned bridge of the Enterprise D and how it was actually easier for them to build it this time around because they had great blueprints, but also, 3D printers help a lot. And LED lights, because they had to use halogen lights on the old
That's right.
Yeah. So, the USS Sutherland is the name of the ship Data took command of in the Next Gen episode Redemption. Drexler is referencing, the USS Drexler is referencing Doug Drexler, who was concept artist on Star Trek Forever. USS Akira, of course, fan service for the anime Akira. USS Luna was Riker's Titan, or at least the type of ship that Riker's Titan was. There were several Luna-class ships in formation here. USS Excelsior, not the original Enterprise B, but the new refit of the Excelsior. And that one was destroyed. USS Ross, most likely a reference to Admiral Ross from Deep Space Nine. New Reliant, there was a USS Reliant in this. This was actually established in Picard Season 1. So USS Castillo is named after Richard Castillo, who was the first officer of the Enterprise C. Whew.
I love the Enterprise C design, by the way.
Oh, it's fantastic. This show has forced me to go into the garage and dig out all my old Enterprise models. So I was actually working on the C last night. The USS Shung-Hi, which is an Inquiry-class ship. This is Riker's ship at the end of Season 1 of Picard when he showed up with the cavalry.
That ship.
Shung-Hi.
Okay.
The USS Ibn al-Hatham, which is named after the Arab astronomer that was born in the year 956. Also an Inquiry-class ship. USS Harlan, named after Harlan Ellison, who wrote probably the most famous episode of the original series, City on the Edge of Forever. USS Forrest, referencing Admiral Forrest from Star Trek Enterprise. The USS Hikaru Sulu, no idea who that guy is.
Yeah.
USS Intrepid, we saw that earlier in the season. That's the ship that Ro was on. And the USS Cochrane, named after, of course, Zefram Cochrane.
Yeah.
Yep. So it is believed that Worf was the captain of the Enterprise F at some point, and he is the reason why that ship is no longer in service. So Elizabeth Dennehy, saw some great interviews with her. She found her dialogue, she's a soap actress, but she found her dialogue from Best of Both Worlds Part 1 and 2 to be so challenging and so formidable that she still has it memorized to this day.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
That's cool.
Decades later, she's reciting that dialogue because she's like, she was going to quit. She had imposter syndrome. She just felt like she wasn't going to do it service. So she just got to a point. I think Frakes said to her, you just say it till you believe it. And then it comes out of your mouth like it's real. So, of course, Federation Day being the anniversary of the NX-01's launch, 250 years prior. Shaw giving 7 command, which we talked about. The Fleet Museum in Docking Bay 12. There was another ship in Docking Bay 12. I don't know if you caught it.
I did not. What?
Behind the Enterprise D was the NX-01.
Oh, now I got to go back and look.
it were there. Majel Barrett, not quite sure if that was a synthesized version of her voice because I found
out about that. They lifted dialogue from other episodes.
Okay, gotcha. She had been working on a project prior to her passing where she had recited every single combination of sounds the human voice can make, in hopes that they could synthesize her voice as like a Siri type thing.
I've got a thing. This is pre-Siri technology where it's just this box that you plug into the wall and then you plug your light or whatever into that box and you can program it so it will say, if you can say computer lights and the lamp will go on.
Nice.
And it's her voice.
Or our chat group is saying that ramming speed must have been involved with Worf, but that's definitely the Riker maneuver. So we know Riker's the guy that rams the ships. All right, and then wrapping things up just a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit afterwards because I'm so confused by this show. Terry Matalas has, as Kerry pointed out a few deep dives ago, he has a show that he's wanting to pitch to Paramount. Paramount's playing very mum about this whole thing, called Star Trek Legacy. And his pitch for this is to take the new generation and the old generation and make a show that spotlights all of that. So by taking a character in her early 50s, like 7 of 9, and giving her a show of mostly young characters, you can develop and spotlight that bridge. She's a perfect character to bridge that gap, but also allowing some of our more established legacy characters like Riker or like LaForge or Worf to have a place in this series. And this is what he wants. He says that it's not in development. He's not currently working for Paramount on any projects, but if you want to see this, make some noise because Paramount's waiting to hear what people think of all of this.
The fandom is certainly speaking out. They're calling it Legacy. They're making posters, they're making trailers, they're doing all of that stuff, and they're sending it. Now, another thing that I read from the not just wishing it into existence side is that this season of Picard is finally doing some ratings.
Nice.
The first 2 seasons didn't do too well. This one is starting to show up in the Nielsen's.
Because there's the thing, we talk about this all the time, is that there's a difference between pandering in your fan service and being reverent in your fan service. And if you're paying homage to something, if you're being if you're being reverent to something, then it doesn't feel cheap. It feels holy in a way, right? Whereas if you're just handing people what they want, if you're putting Red 5 in the last battle scene of your movie because it's there, that's pandering and it doesn't feel good, right? So he said, and this I pulled specifically for you, he said there's been a very vocal fan of this season of Picard, a person named Nana Visitor, and she's a huge fan of Picard. She's been very vocal on social media about it. And he said, look, she's amazing. I love everything about her. I want nothing more than to bring her back for legacy, because Ro was such a big part of this season. And he's like, let's see what her comrades of arms are up to. Let's see what's happening in the Klingon Empire. Let's see what the Doctor from Voyager is up to after he's actually considered sentient. Let's be able to use this new crew to show these stories.
All of this could be explored. You could one season. You could promise, you say, Paramount, give me one season and just let me fart around in the Star Trek universe where we're at and explore all of these things, because God, I would love to find out what happened to Deep Space Nine.
Right.
I mean, I have the comic books and the books and all that, but I want to see it on my shows.
I want to see what happened, where they went. Just fingers crossed. I think it could be amazing if we see that. We have one episode of Picard left. And like we talked last week, I'm not ready.
I mean, I think I have an idea of what's going to happen, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to be surprised. I'm going to love it.
I think the mindset I had going into the 9th episode paid off, which is just walk into it like a little child with no expectations. And I just repeatedly had my mind blown. I should have seen the Enterprise D happening. I should have seen the Borg happening. I should have seen all that stuff happening. And instead, my brain was blank, and that allowed me to go for the ride and have the emotions and let my family make fun of me for bawling openly over a freaking spaceship.
Oh, please. I've been watching these online videos of grown men crying, tears in their eyes, big men, tough men, crying when and it's like their wives are shooting. Their wives have got their camera phone, and they're like, look at it. And they're standing there going,
yeah. And the D is my least favorite Enterprise.
Mine too.
And I see it all like... They've been doing such a good job with this. And to top it all off, they're giving us teasers for Strange New Worlds, which is starting in June. And that teaser is just so sexy. I don't care. I mean, you can tell me that a Star Trek teaser is sexy. I would have been stuffed in a trash can for saying that 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. And we were.
And we were, repeatedly. So
that's what's great about this whole thing, is that we're getting Strange New Worlds, we're getting more Lower Decks, which do not come at me for liking Lower Decks. I'm sorry, I'm not going to play.
I'm not a big dummy. Why would I do that?
I got people DMing me about, now why do you, the people are so flippant. That's not very Starfleet. And I'm like, it's a comedy. It's supposed to. Yeah.
And guys. Anyway. I mean, nobody in our chat is going to say this, but this comes up for every once in a while where somebody wants to challenge somebody and make them justify their fandom. We don't need to do that, guys. That's a bad look for us. That is such a bad look for us. We don't have to justify, as human beings, we don't have to justify why we like macaroni and cheese over linguine, right? These are the things that we like, and we like them. We don't have to justify any of it, unless it's like...
I always take it back to the comic book store, the place where we used to find refuge and we find like-minded people. When a stranger walked in, we were happy to see him.
Right.
Oh, you want to know about this cool thing that I love? Please come.
Right.
I'm not going to qualify it. Here, look at this. This is fabulous. I
remember being so blown away by the concept of gatekeeping, because the first time my D&D group got to play D&D with girls, we were so gobsmacked that they'd even want to see what it was about, right? So
exactly.
Yeah.
And I've encountered that out in the wild, and I've had to, shut down those toxic fans. God. The last time I had to do it was down in Southern California at a comic book store that I don't go to, because the owner was pulling that stuff on this girl that walked in and said she wanted to read some Batman comics, and he's like, "Oh, for your boyfriend?" And she's like, "No, I want them for me." And she left. I followed her out, and I said, look, here's comic shop locator. Go to this other place that's a mile away, and just go in and, just read. Just go in and read the stuff. Don't talk to anybody. Just go read.
And for those of you, we hear this from time to time where people are saying, oh, that doesn't really happen. I guarantee you, talk to any woman that's walked into a comic shop that, has experienced that. They have experienced it. And that's just not a good look for us guys. So we could all be better, and we can all be better and enjoy these shows together, because we're going to have a lot more fun if we have more folks to talk to about it.
Exactly. And don't talk down to people who don't know their stuff, Bring them along.
Lesson I just learned this week, as we grow older and we mature, we have to open ourselves up to new experiences and new lessons. I learned this week that I don't need to pause and explain to my wife everything that's happening. She's plenty smart. She'll figure it out on her own. If she wants to know, she can ask. And she will.
And I do that with Sue. I let her hit the pause. I don't.
Yep.
Because if we're watching a Marvel movie and, she'll go, now wait. And I'll go, yeah. Okay.
Because you know what doesn't necessarily matter? The entire history of the Enterprise C. Probably not a thing that anybody cares about.
No.
I loved it. It's a great episode. Yesterday's Enterprise is amazing. Watch it 10 times.
Exactly.
But, maybe that's just an opportunity for us to go and watch Yesterday's Enterprise instead of me sitting there slavishly explaining the history of Captain
you want to know about that? Here, let's do this.
Let's watch this together. Date night at the Kade house with Star Trek, which is exactly how that relationship started. Huzzah! So, all right, folks. Make sure to like and subscribe. These are going to our podcast feed sooner than later.
Someday.
We'll have specifics on that, but you folks have been asking for more content. We're going to bring you more content.
We may bring you more content than you want. We'll see.
Yeah, I think the word used was fire hose, so get ready.
Yeah. That's things are changing on the Geek Show. It's not changing. I'm going to say evolving. Evolving is the way I want to put it.
It's our 15-year ongoing experiment to seek out new franchises.
It's taken us 15 years to evolve.
It's been a slow start. It's been a long time.
But we're getting there.
It's a quote Enterprise.
Exactly. Oh, you know what I found out about that? Again, you need to be watching that Center Seat show.
I'm going to watch it.
That theme song for Enterprise, it was supposed to be a U2 song. But U2 wouldn't give them the rights. And so they go watch it. You'll see. I don't want to ruin it for you. I mean, I already have, but go
So they brought in an impersonator of who's the guy that loves to sing from Arthur?
It sounds like Kenny Loggins to me, but anyway.
Yeah. So, and here's Christopher Cross with the theme song from Enterprise.
When you get caught between the moon and Rise of 7 or whatever.
When you get caught between the moon and Rise of 7. Yeah, it works, Kerry. It works. I think we've got a hit. A hit.
All right, then we will see you here at the same time next week for the last episode of Picard.
I gotta get my models finished. See everybody.
Would you do one of mine too? Because I've got a couple in here that are just in boxes.
Kerry, let me build your models.
I've got the Enterprise A in there with lights.
With lights?
It needs to be assembled, Leigh.
Stop talking dirty to me, Kerry Jackson.
All right.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you later. Ta-da.